Welcome to Women Talkin Bout AI. Today, we're joined by Dr. Stacie Chana, founder of Tech Ed Maven Consulting and a leader in ethical, inclusive AI integration in education. Stacie shares her journey from STEM educator to AI consultant, her early aha moments with generative AI, and practical advice for teachers navigating the challenges and the opportunities of AI in the classroom. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone. Today on Women Talkin Bout AI, we are welcoming Dr. Stacie Chana, founder of Tech Ed Maven Consulting. She integrates AI ethically and inclusively in education and has leveraged over 20 years of urban educational leadership. A 2024 ASU GSV AI Classroom Innovator and a 2025 Leading Woman in AI in Education, her mission is to uplift all learners, especially those in marginalized areas. She advocates for equitable, safe, and community-centered tech practices in education, and we are so excited to welcome you here, Stacie.
Thank you, Kimberly and Jessica. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of your path and how you got started in education. I understand that your path is rooted specifically in educational leadership and not computer science. And I know that you are a legacy of Chicago Public Schools. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say my journey into STEM and STEM education started as a child. My father was a STEM educator and he served in Chicago Public Schools at the same school, Crane High School, for 4 years. So I remember being very, very young, having access to computers, helping him grade papers, and just really having that early exposure to STEM that a lot of students don't necessarily have. And I had no intentions on being an educator. I went to Augustana College. I majored in pre-med biology. And when I graduated, I was applying for graduate programs and I started substitute teaching at the time. And I just really enjoyed it. The kids, everything, building with them, seeing them become so fluent in their interest for science and just really helping them become young adults. It really took for me. And from there, I went and got my certification in STEM education at Northwestern University through their Golden Applegate program. And now here we are over 20 years later, and I'm at the helm of Tech Ed Maven Consulting, really working strategically to bridge the gap for STEM technology education for educators, educational leaders, as we move into our increasingly technological society. I really became passionate about the work when I was a biology teacher and I taught freshmen, and my students would come in and they would tell me that they'd never had science before and they loved the class so much. And what started out as apprehension for them engaging in STEM turned into passion and love. And so it began to ask questions for me as to why they never had STEM in elementary school. And as I grew in my leadership and my understanding of educational systems, I realized that we have a shortage of STEM educators, as we all know. And communities that are most higher need and often marginalized have the most difficult time obtaining educators to serve within those communities. And from that point on, I just knew that I was going to be a STEM teacher in one way, shape, or form for the rest of my life.
Cool. So when it comes to AI, what was your first aha moment when you realized that it was going to play a real tangible role?
Yeah, my AI story. So I was a part of the team that built the newest STEM high school in Chicago, Inglewood STEM. And we started that work before the pandemic, of course, and everyone knows we were off school for a year and a half. We came back, we still had COVID with us, and it was challenging. But one of the first things, once we were able to stabilize and make sure that learning was moving forward, we went to the ASU GSV conference and I was attending the superintendent's workshops and I was standing in the back of the room just trying to take it all in. And I overheard the then superintendent of Miami, who is now the superintendent of LAUSD, Alberto Carvalho, kind of just throw out an aftershot after their panel. And he mentioned to pay attention to a report called the 2035 Skills Imperative. Now, this was in 2021. And at that time, no one was really talking about AI. I knew it was a thing. I knew that there were algorithms and patterns and, different ways that it was integrate into our lives and the technology that we use. But I really didn't have a full concept of how it was going to change everything in education, jobs, and just basically everything we do. I paid attention though, and I heard the call and I looked up the report and I said, okay, this is something we need to dive deeper into. When I looked, year and a half after that, ChatGPT was released. And I started playing around with it just casually, just to see, okay, well, what is this? I kept seeing it on Instagram pop up. And I was like, okay, well, let me see what this can do. And I started asking questions about things and skills that I can build upon what I already have. And then from there, I said, let me take some of the more challenging things I do as a school leader and see how I can apply it to more efficiently and more creatively build out things that we need to work within the school. I started creating 90-day plans, attendance plans, incentive plans, and I said, "Oh, this is really something." And so from that moment, I went down what I call the AI rabbit hole. And I would sit up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and really try to press into it and see if I could break the technology.
Same.
And yeah, at that time, there were limitations. Of course, I was using the free version of ChatGPT, which was 3.5. And once I uploaded to Pro, it was definitely a significant difference. But it doesn't matter the platform that you use. It's really whatever you're comfortable with. And, you can use a mixture of them. But where it really hit me and Tech Ed Maven was born was I was outside watering my garden a few months later, and I had overheard teachers talking about they were using ChatGPT on their pre-conference evaluation. And I said, that's great, but this could be used really constructively. And it hit me to begin writing and creating content for educators, aligning to the work that they already do to teach them how to integrate these generative AI chatbots into their daily work. And that's what I did. I began self-publishing, had no idea what I was doing, where the book was going, any of the process, but I just started writing and creating content and self-publishing on Amazon and really just spreading kind of a grassroots movement. And then, people started asking me to speak and present for their faculty. And then I was contacted by Solution Tree Publishing, who I currently have a book in queue that will be out this fall. And it's just really exciting.
Tell me about I think this is great and it sounds very similar. There's a lot of parallels between Kimberly and I as well, where we also went down that rabbit hole. And early on, we had days where we would just spend hours doing our own little research studies where we're like, can it do this? And then it could. And then we're like, we're not thinking big enough. It can do all the things that we're trying to test it for. And then just seeing it was like overwhelming, seeing all of the opportunities in front of us. And then I'm wondering if this has happened for you where I don't want to say it's shifted, but then it's like the more you learn to leverage it and the more you learn about its limitations and its capabilities, then you also start to see the concerns and you start to become aware of, for example, its just tendency to exacerbate existing stereotypes and biases. And obviously all the sensationalism that's happening in the media around cheating. And I'm curious to know, like, what has been your journey with that through the initial, for us is like this aha moment, this discovery stage. And then it's like, okay, well, now we also need to help people understand how to use it ethically and responsibly. And these are the sort of dangers that are in front of us if we don't educate folks. What has that journey been like for you and how you sort of manage that when you're talking to school leaders or even parents for that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things that's just automatically ingrained in me as a school leader is before I do anything, I question, okay, can somebody get hurt? Is this legal? Is this going to get us in trouble? Is this going to cause some type of controversy? And all of those things came to mind. And so anytime I have a conversation with anyone or any type of presentation, I want to make sure that I lead off with what I call the 4 careful considerations. And those for me are privacy, safety, ethical use, and bias. And those things are very paramount and important as we begin to interweave AI into our educational system. Um, the safety aspects came to mind when I first started writing content for teachers, because I also heard people were creating IEPs and such. And that is okay, but you never want to include personal or identifying information in a generative AI platform, because we don't know where this data is going, what purposes it's being used for, and it's not private. And so if your school system has in their acceptable use policy and they vetted and they have a certain enterprise model, then that's okay. But just the layperson using it to, you know, do things where they have people's names or anything that would be considered identifying information, that's a big no-no. Um, and that aligns directly with privacy, right? We don't know where the data is going, what it's being used for. And you have to be very careful. And certain models, depending on where their origin is, I won't say specifically, but I would be very leery of models that are not based within the US and using those, because those models may be owned by those governments of those other countries. And if you read the fine print, your content is now owned by those parties within this other countries. Ethics is a huge piece. Where do we draw the line between human involvement, what's appropriate for students? You know, we now have people beginning to form relationships with AI chatbots. I think there have been some unfortunate situations where students have had mental health crises in relation to these relationships with generative AI. So we have to be very careful as we introduce this further to students. Cheating is a concern, but it's not on my high list of, it's lower on my list of concerns after these 4 careful considerations, uh, because it's a shift, right? And it's a shift in terms of practice, just like the calculator, just like the internet. And the book that I have coming out with Solution Tree AI Experiments really dives in on how to utilize it within the classroom so that you can still maintain that cognitive load for students, but yet teach them the content. And of course, not least of concerns are the concerns with bias. As a woman of color, you know, I'm sensitive to things that come off because of the intersection of being both a woman and a woman of color. And so for me, it really became paramount the amount of bias when I started creating images. And I would play around and just kind of say, oh, create an image of happy children, create an image of sad children, or well-behaved children, badly behaved children. And almost without fail, the positively aligned situations were aligned to children who were white. And the situations that were bad behaved or sad or had some type of negative connotation were aligned to children of color or non-white. And it varied in race and ethnic background of the things that I saw. And so that is something that we have to be very, very careful about. And that's something that everyone should be experimenting with. Think about asking questions. Just recently, I was creating a GPT to support me doing statistics. And I wanted to call it the statistics master. And I said, create an image for it. And it created an image of a white man. And I prompted it multiple times, and it still came back and created an image of a white man. And so these are things that as women and, you know, as people who are supportive of all ethnicities, we have to be very mindful of.
Yeah, that's been a trend lately. I did it where I was curious. I can't, maybe I saw it on LinkedIn where people were like, ask ChatGPT to generate an image of you based on what it thinks you look like. And it was just it was a white man, which I wasn't surprised. I had a feeling that that was going to happen. Kimberly, who was that scholar who talks about where the crescents,
Mahabali.
Bali? Yeah, her work is really interesting where, you know, yeah, there's so many examples of this. And I feel like it's just definitely not top of mind, especially for young children. And it becomes this like subconscious thing that happens when you're using the chatbot. You don't realize that you're not represented or your community isn't represented in its output and its suggestions. But it can be very tricky because especially when you think about text generated content, it comes across as very authoritative, and it's very confident. And so for a child or even an adult who's a non-expert, because it looks so credible, it looks like a really polished piece of writing that you would expect in, a newspaper written by a journalist or in a peer-reviewed article by a researcher. And you have a tendency to want to believe it because of that credibility in it. It really just highlights the importance of the literacy component, the education, and not just AI literacy, but just basic digital literacy as well.
Absolutely. And as we know, the content on the internet is largely white, westernized, industrialized. And so it doesn't represent diverse cultures. And one thing, I don't know if people have started to notice the generative AI summaries that are at the top. I think Google's in a lawsuit now. But these generative AI summaries that are at the top of our search engines, they pick and choose what you see. So if a person is only looking at these generative AI summaries, they're really completely dependent upon what the AI is choosing to show them as the result of their query. Another factor that comes to mind with what you were saying is that content potentially can be whitewashed in this manner, right? And so if we have generative AI helping us to create content, and then we know that that content that it is producing in these outputs is not representative of our society and all of the different ethnic and demographic groups. And then we put this content on the internet. Now we're just continuously reinforcing a cycle of content that is not representative, equitable, and free from bias. And all of these things I talk about in my book, and they are factors and things that I've created tools and resources for. And so I will send you guys a link, and you can leave it in the description of your video, where I have a resource that has 4 frameworks within it that are free of charge, of course. And one is the prompt recipe to teach you how to build out generative AI prompts. The second would be the Check AI framework, which really goes through and step-by-step teaches you how to check those outputs to make sure that they're accurate, because they do sound authoritative, right? And then the third would be the bias identification framework to help you look at any content, not just generative AI, but something you might see on a YouTube video or anywhere, to really try to train your mind to be on the lookout for bias at all times. And the fourth would be the is it real or not framework. And that is to help people try to discern what content on the internet is real and what may be fake content or deep fakes or false narratives. And so I'll leave that link to that resource with you guys.
Yeah, and it can be tricky. I have been, I'll admit there have been times where I've been online and I'll see a piece of content that after, taking a closer look, it's fully AI generated, and it tricks me. And then I think, like, how in the world are young kids, or just even adults who are not educated on this technology supposed to differentiate between deep fakes? I don't know. It's overwhelming. Like, I'm very grateful that people like you are in this space. I mean, Kimberly and I predominantly work with graduate students, faculty, at the end of the education pipeline, if you will. But I see like a big lift that has to be done in the K through 12 space. I mean, these are the future leaders, and they need teachers and administrators who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work in order to help them and their parents navigate all of this.
Yeah, it's so essential. It's a skill that, and I think back to being in the classroom and probably 10, 15 years ago, teaching students to do research and having to teach them, okay, well, this is an appropriate source and this is not an appropriate source. And it was kind of more cut and dry then because you would just look at, okay, here's the origin of the source. This is a .com or this is a .org or a .edu. Is it reputable? But now there's so much, post social media, post just the information, the access to information, the ability to get it to people so fast and in such an abundance, the dependence upon and the addiction to social media and technological devices. They're geared to be that way. Students are bombarded with content almost their entire waking time of the day. And so it's really a change in the way of thinking to teach them as adults how we say, okay, I'm looking at this content, something feels off about it. It's overwhelming. It's just too much for what it should be. And really focusing on those skills is going to be a skill that is necessary in the future moving forward for everyone. I want to go back to what you said about educators. Right now, there's a lot of fear from educators about AI in general, cheating, and what the role of teachers and educators will be in the future if we have AI and AI tutors. And it's very important. There's a report that came out in May of 2023 from the Office of Educational Technology, and it discusses the future of teaching and learning in artificial intelligence. And it's been archived since then under the new administration, but it is still a valuable resource if you Google it and go to the archives and find it. And it has a lot of additional sources, and it focuses on how important it will be for educators and parents and community members and stakeholders and everyone who has a role in this to stay in the loop. And the concept of human in the loop is essential as we move into our increasingly technological society. Can't just completely turn things over to technology and remove ourselves from the loop, because that's when things can get out of hand. And as the technologies increase and we move more towards super intelligence and AGI, it is going to be even more essential that we are hands-on and fully questioning and discussing what is coming up and how we can modify if needed. Another thing I wanted to bring up is around the subject of cheating are AI detectors. And there have been multiple studies at this juncture that AI detection does not work, and it is biased against students who are non-traditional English language students. And so using those, you're not going to get what you're looking for. And you're potentially going to harm students in the process. So thinking about how you can integrate the technology into your teaching and learning and create opportunities for students to not use the technology, as well as creating opportunities for them to do it, and kind of shifting a lot of that work into the classroom where you can more accurately determine who is using the technologies and not is going to be essential.
Now, I wonder if you share this concern. Something that comes up for me is, right now it does feel, and this is a bit, I get too generalized, but just across the board, like the conversations we're having, it does feel like a lot of the responsibility does fall on the teachers. And which typically happens in education. The teachers, anytime there's a new technology that comes out, they're the ones who have to figure out what it's going to look like implementing that in the classroom. Even myself at my level, I've had to redo all of my rubrics, rethink assessment. I don't get paid extra for that. And so in some ways it's like, okay, this is just another thing that teachers have to deal with. And, one professional development session, a semester or a few every school year isn't really enough for teachers. And then I know that we talked about before we started recording this new executive order with an AI task force. It's like all of that is great. But when we think about the day to day for a teacher, and in many states, like I'm in North Carolina, where teachers are really undervalued and underpaid. like, how do we navigate that? What are those conversations that you're having where it's like, okay, this all sounds lovely, but I'm maxed out. Don't have anything left to give. I'm supportive of trying to figure this out, but I don't have the resources to do it.
Right.
How are administrators really thinking about that in a practical way?
Yeah, I mean, leaders really have to take the charge. And so when you engage in any type of transformative work within your organization, we at UIC, where I'm a graduate of their urban education leadership program, we use the lowest framework. And in that framework, it talks about leadership and how leadership's development will then translate into organizational improvement. And then once the structures are within the organization, then that translates into the improvement of instruction. And once instruction is improved, then that translates into student achievement. And so we must start out with leadership. And I've actually gotten a lot of traction from leaders from the Asia Instructional Leadership, which really teaches the fundamentals of the things we've talked about, the 4 careful considerations. We go deep into those, to how to protect our school community, how do we stay informed, and then how do we utilize this technology to help teachers build their practice through coaching around instructional improvement. And so we're leveraging the AI to help us help teachers to integrate this in. There's no one size fit all answer. Society, things are changing rapidly than they've ever been before. Maybe a year and a half ago, I've talked to a lot of ed tech founders, people who've been in the game for 20, 25, 30 years. And they say the advancements in AI the internet looks paled compared to what is going to translate into our world based on generative AI's advancements and then quantum computing as we move forward. So to answer your question, there is no easy answer. It is really going to take an all hands on deck approach. I am glad to hear that there is going to be funding allocated for this transition and to support teachers within K-12, because it is going to be a big lift. It is going to be more than a 1 hour workshop. As we know, any effective professional development takes place over time, and there's checks and there's balances and there's reteaching, just like we would work with our students. It's the same thing. And it's going to be a major shift. I teach one class at Roosevelt. I've been teaching it since the pandemic, secondary education, curriculum and instruction. And I was just talking to them the other day, and I said, I'm really excited for you all, because you're one of the first groups that is going to graduate into the teaching profession. And you've had exposure to generative AI, and you have, only taught or will have only taught in the world of generative AI. And it's going to be so important for all of our teachers, no matter where they are in their stage in their career, no matter where they are in their level of comfort with technology, to really lean in on this, ask for help when they need help, and I'm here to support.
I'm going to pause and let Kimberly ask a question. I've been firing away.
Yes. Sorry, I was in the middle of that. My kid had no money in his lunch account at school. And so that was the message that you kept hearing the ding. So sorry about that. Realities. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, if a teacher came to you today and said, Dr. Chana, I don't know where to start. I'm fascinated. I'm also overwhelmed. Well, what direction would you point them in?
I get it. It is overwhelming. I have to tune out AI news periodically and come back to it, because it just moves so fast and things are changing so rapidly. So, I want to acknowledge that, right? Because it is. And, but one way I would start, and we're coming up on summer break, and I always tell people to lean into generative AI in an area that they're already an expert. So for me right now, and this is non-school related because we're about to go on summer break, right? School teachers are. And I'm using it to help me garden. And so I'm planning in Zone 6B Chicago what plants, what perennials, what annuals will look nice together. And so in this really risk-free, enjoyable way, I'm taking pictures, I'm asking questions, and I'm utilizing generative AI to help me build this master garden and landscaping project that I'm working. And so it's helping me. And so once a person gets comfortable using it in a way that's kind of low stakes, then they can start to approach it, using it in a higher stakes way. Maybe use it to help you generate ideas for a lesson. Maybe use it to help you rewrite text or soften text or differentiate text. I mean, there's so many different ways that it can be utilized. And I talk about those different ways or experiments with AI in my upcoming book, with Solution Tree. But just getting in there and playing around with it and experimenting and taking safe risks in that manner are a way to go. And if you're looking for a resource, we'll leave it in the chat where my AI skills resource will really kind of give you some frameworks and some ideas on how to start using the technology in an organized way, how to generate those prompts, how to go back in and check and make sure they're accurate, and identifying bias and looking for content that may not be real on the internet. And so just awareness, just engaging with this podcast, just even taking learning, you're already starting your first steps.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Well, what's next for Tech Ed Maven? Like any new initiatives or collaborations that we should be watching for?
Yeah. So what's next? That's the big question they're going to ask me, right? And so right now I am doing professional developments all over the country. I'm doing podcasts, engaging, just doing the teaching and learning. I am available if you go to our website, www.techedmaven, or you can just Google Tech Ed Maven Consulting. I'm also active on LinkedIn, so you can directly contact me there. And we're here to serve and help you navigate this very rapidly moving transition. And it is rapid, and it is here, and it's not going anywhere. I'm really excited about the book that is being released with Solution Tree. I haven't mentioned the title because we're still in finalization. But if you check out their catalog and you check out my LinkedIn and you follow me or my Facebook, you will definitely hear the title once it's finalized. It's definitely going to contain AI experiments, discussions. And that's where we're going. The technology is moving so fast that, we have to be rapid. We have to move with it. And we're here to support.
Cool. Well, we always end our sessions by sharing our pits and peaches of, it can be the day, the week, the month. It can be personal or professional. A pit is like something that challenged you, and a peach is like something that uplifted you. So does anybody want to go first? Does anybody have one at top of mind? I'm just trying to think of what mine would be.
I'll say mine is a continuation.
Okay.
Sweet. So my peach last week, still my peach this week. So I took last weekend off. I unplugged for 2 days. I didn't even open my laptop. It was really hard for me. I went to like my local favorite hotel and spa that feels like a home away from home for me, and treated myself because I've been very burnt out and just exhausted. And it was exactly what I needed. I feel like energized again. And it just reminded me the importance of like self-care. And I know that word gets thrown a lot now, but I don't know, just how re-energized I feel this week just reminded me the importance of, like, if you're just constantly giving to other people all the time, then you have nothing left to give. And yeah, it was just really good. I'm glad that I did that. And so I still feel like the remnants of that unplugging. So I feel good. My pit is, I don't know, my cats are in a weird phase right now. They're not letting me sleep. Like last night, one of them was just standing on top of me, meowing at 3 a.m. And I don't know why. Normally I just feed them and that makes them happy, but that didn't work. So still, I don't know, cat life.
Cat mom life.
Cat mom life. Yeah, I don't have children, so those are my children.
Yeah.
My pit, and it's ongoing, is a lot of the, or all of the, just tension and disdain and hatred that is going on in society based on people's differences, race, gender. I feel like it's escalating. I know it's escalating. And not sure what we're going to do about that. We're resilient, but I do think that as a nation, we've had better moments in this area. My peach would be you guys see announced I was one of the leaders on the move yesterday. So that was exciting. People sent it to me. In terms of the things that the work with AI and Solution Tree and being named one of the leading women in AI. So it's really nice to get that recognition from my doctoral.
That's great. Congrats. That's wonderful.
Congrats.
Forgot this dog board.
My pit is that my dog has something going on. I don't know if it's kennel call, tracheal collapse. Something is not going right with he has a big cough. But yeah, and also, which is, I just want to second your concern about sort of the nature of the world. I'm really struggling with all the binary news. It's like I go to the gym and I'm looking up at the screens of news, and it's like 3 or 4 different news, and it's the same character, totally different story, totally different. I mean, you wouldn't even know that, like, it's the same country. It's so the news is reported in such different ways on different channels, and that really, really concerns me. So yeah, beyond the everyday, the dog cough, I'm just kind of hiding from all that. It's too chaotic and wild and unpredictable for me. My peach is that I have been letting myself do the things in my work that I really, really find joy in, and just sort of lean into those instead of always prioritizing like the most practical item first, which sometimes I have to do, but I really love writing. I really love creating content and just strategizing. And so I've been letting myself do that, and it just feels very freeing. So yeah, I think I'm at the point where I'm like, I might as well lean into that, because who knows how long it's going to last, we just don't know. So anyway, yeah, just learning about myself and what I like and how I want to work. And this podcast is right up there at the top of things that I love. So thank you for being part of that with us. And not sure when the podcast will air, but we'll very eager to see what people comment and how we get some conversation started and some engagement with this really great conversation with Dr. Stacie Chana. Thanks, Stacie, so much.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back.